My name is Yvette D. Smith. This happened about a year ago, but the irony still feels fresh enough that sometimes I almost laugh when I think about it. At the time, though, there was nothing funny about watching 6 years of loyalty get reduced to a backup plan. Kevin and I met in college. I was studying engineering, always planning ahead, always thinking about what came next. Kevin studied marketing and had the kind of energy that made everything around him feel exciting. We clicked immediately. After graduation, we moved into a cozy apartment in the city, split the rent, bought mismatched furniture, and started building what I believed was a future. For the first few years, things were genuinely good. I was loyal almost to a fault. I once turned down a job that would have required relocating because Kevin had just started at his agency and didn't want the disruption. Instead, I accepted a local position as a project engineer so I could stay beside him. When he was passed over for a promotion and started struggling with anxiety, I became his emotional anchor. I cooked dinner after long workdays. I listened while he vented for hours. When insurance stopped covering enough of his therapy, I dipped into my savings. "You're my safe place," Kevin used to whisper while leaning against me. Back then, those words meant everything. Looking back, they should have warned me. I was safe. But apparently, safe wasn't exciting enough. Kevin became increasingly obsessed with social media and networking. He would scroll through influencers' lives and say things like, "Look at what they're doing. Why don't we live like that?" I would suggest weekend trips. He would say he was too busy. Then came the late-night industry mixers, and Alexa. Alexa worked for a partner firm. At first, Kevin talked about her professionally. "Alexa understands the market. Alexa has amazing connections. Alexa backpacked through Europe for 6 months." Her name appeared constantly. I felt jealous sometimes, but I pushed it down. I trusted him. We had talked about marriage, children, a house. I was the woman who remembered anniversaries with handwritten cards and planned his favorite meals. I even canceled a girls' trip to the mountains because Kevin's family was visiting and he wanted me there to help manage tension surrounding his mother's divorce. So I stayed. That was what partnership meant to me. About 6 months before everything collapsed, Kevin started attending more mixers. Our intimacy changed. Some days he was affectionate, others, distant. Whenever I asked, he blamed work. Then one Friday evening, I came home early and cooked his favorite pasta. Garlic and basil filled the apartment when Kevin walked in. Something about his face immediately felt wrong. Distracted. Restless. "We need to talk," he said. We sat at the kitchen table. He pushed his plate away after 2 bites. "I've been thinking about us." My stomach tightened. Then he said her name. "Alexa." I set down my fork. "What about her?" "We've gotten close." "How close?" Kevin looked away. "We've gone out a few times." The room seemed to tilt. "So, you're seeing another woman?" "Nothing serious yet." Yet. That word stayed with me. "She's different," he continued. "Exciting. Being around her made me realize maybe I've been settling." I stared at him. "So you're breaking up with me?" "Not exactly." That answer was somehow worse. Kevin twisted his napkin between his fingers. "I don't want to lose you completely. You're still my best friend." I said nothing. "And physically, we're good together." I already knew I wasn't going to like what came next. "So maybe we shift things." "Shift them how?" "Friends with benefits." I honestly thought he was joking. Kevin continued. "Just until I'm sure about Alexa." The silence between us became enormous. "That way I get space to explore this, but we don't lose the good parts." "The good parts?" "Sex. Hanging out. No labels. No pressure." He smiled slightly. "It's mature, Yvette." I leaned back. "You want me as a backup while you test drive another woman?" Kevin rolled his eyes. "Don't make it sound ugly. What would you call it?" "Practical." Then came the sentence that destroyed whatever respect I still had left. "If Alexa doesn't work out, we could pick up where we left off." I stared at the man I had sacrificed jobs, money, trips, and years for. "And if I say no?" Kevin shrugged. Then I guess we're done. But honestly, that would be stupid. I nodded slowly. That doesn't work for me. His expression changed. What? If you're not all in, neither am I. I stood. We're done completely. No friendship, no benefits. Nothing. His eyes widened. Seriously, after everything? Exactly. I packed an overnight bag while he followed me around the apartment arguing that I was emotional, dramatic, and throwing away 6 years. At the door, he finally snapped. Fine. Go. You'll regret this when you're alone. I looked at him one last time, then I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me. No screaming, no begging, no negotiation. Kevin thought he had offered me a choice between being his backup and losing him. He had no idea that losing him would become the best option he ever gave me. That first night, I stayed at a friend's place and stared at the ceiling until almost sunrise. The confusion hurt more than the anger. How could the man I had supported for years honestly believe I would accept being reduced to a convenient backup while he explored someone else? I replayed the conversation over and over. It's win-win. Win for who? Kevin got Alexa, freedom, and me waiting in reserve. I got whatever scraps he decided to offer. The next few days, I focused on logistics instead of emotion. I arranged to collect my belongings while Kevin was at work, canceled shared subscriptions, separated our finances, and removed myself from everything that tied us together. Then I blocked him everywhere: phone, social media, email, no contact. It wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. But emotionally, I was nowhere near finished. Old memories kept returning. When Kevin lost his job briefly during the pandemic, I covered the full rent for 3 months while working overtime. You're my hero, he had told me then. When his father showed up during the holidays and reopened years of family conflict, I became the mediator. I hosted everyone, kept arguments from exploding, and even loaned Kevin's brother money when he was struggling. I had made those sacrifices willingly because I believed we were building one life together. Now I wondered whether Kevin had simply gotten comfortable receiving. At night, doubt crept in. Maybe I really was too safe, too predictable. Maybe Alexa represented something I couldn't give him. That was when I started therapy. My therapist listened while I explained Kevin's proposal. When I finished, she said quietly, "He wanted you to remain his emotional safety net while he pursued someone he considered more exciting." Hearing it stated plainly changed something. Kevin hadn't offered me an evolved relationship. He had offered himself every advantage while asking me to accept the pain. So I stopped asking what was wrong with me. I started asking why I had tolerated so much. I went to the gym before work. I returned to engineering projects I had neglected. I met friends I hadn't seen regularly because so much of my schedule had revolved around Kevin. There were no dramatic social media posts, no public attacks. Whenever mutual acquaintances asked what happened, I kept it simple. We wanted different things. Weeks passed. At first, Kevin's silence bothered me. Part of me expected him to realize what he had done and come running immediately. He didn't. For a while. That made me feel disposable. Then slowly, the silence became freedom. I rented a small studio apartment. Nothing luxurious. But every object inside belonged to me. I also accepted a promotion I probably would have rejected while we were together because it involved occasional travel. The pay was better, the work was challenging, and suddenly, my future wasn't limited by whether Kevin would find it inconvenient. I went on a couple casual dates, nothing serious, but they reminded me of something important. I wasn't boring. I had simply been committed to someone who treated commitment like a lack of imagination. About a month after the breakup, the first pieces of Kevin's new reality started reaching me through mutual friends. Apparently, Alexa wasn't interested in anything serious. They had gone out several times and hooked up, but once Kevin told her that he was fully available and wanted to build something real, her enthusiasm faded. Then, they took a weekend trip together. Kevin reportedly confessed that he had left a 6-year relationship because he believed what he had with Alexa was special. A few days later, she stopped answering him. Completely. The exciting possibility had vanished the moment he tried turning it into commitment. Kevin unraveled quickly afterward. He called in sick to work, missed an important presentation, lost a major client. Then came the first email. The subject line was simple. Can we talk? Yvette, I miss our conversations. Things with Alexa fizzled out. She was just a phase. I know things ended badly, but remember how good we were as friends? Maybe we could grab coffee. No pressure. I could really use your advice right now. I read it once, then deleted it. A week later, my apartment intercom buzzed. Hello? Yvette. Kevin. My stomach tightened. I know you're upstairs. Please, 5 minutes. I stayed silent. I screwed up. I know that now. You were always the steady one. I took you for granted. Then came the line I expected. Can't we at least be friends again? Friends. The very benefit he had assumed would remain available after choosing someone else. I didn't let him upstairs. After that, Kevin recruited other people. His best friend called from an unfamiliar number. Yvette, he's going through hell. Alexa used him and disappeared. He needs his support system. I'm not his support system anymore. After 6 years, you owe him more than this. No. Then his cousin messaged me on LinkedIn. Be the bigger person. Everyone makes mistakes. He's barely eating and crying constantly. I blocked him too. Soon Kevin's apologies turned angry. Messages arrived from borrowed numbers. How can you ignore me after everything? I was honest with you. You're punishing me for exploring my feelings. That's controlling. Another said, fine. Be alone forever. You'll realize nobody will ever be as exciting as I was. I never responded. Because every new message confirmed that Kevin still didn't understand what he had done. He wasn't sorry that he treated me like an option. He was sorry his preferred option had rejected him, and by then, something inside me had changed. I no longer wanted him to understand. I just wanted him out of my life. 6 months after that Friday night, I finally believed I had succeeded. Then, we both received an invitation to the same rooftop birthday party. And for the first time since I walked away, Kevin and I were about to stand face to face again. By the 6th month after the breakup, Kevin had tried almost every route back into my life. Emails, borrowed phones, mutual friends, LinkedIn messages, even showing up at my building. I answered none of them. That silence finally became easier than explaining myself. Meanwhile, my life kept expanding. The promotion brought better pay and opportunities to travel. I returned from conferences with new contacts, new ideas, and the strange realization that I had spent years shrinking my choices around Kevin's comfort. I was also taking care of myself again. I went to the gym regularly, saw friends more often, and stopped treating every free weekend as something that needed to be reserved for a relationship. The biggest difference was internal. I no longer wondered whether I had been too stable. Stability had never been the problem. Being taken for granted was. Then our mutual friend Jake invited me to his rooftop birthday party. I almost declined when I learned Kevin might attend. Then I caught myself. Why should I avoid my friends because of a man I had already removed from my life? So I went. I had just returned from a work conference and arrived with 2 coworkers. The rooftop was crowded with string lights, music, drinks, and people I hadn't seen in months. For the first hour, everything was easy. Then I noticed Kevin. He stood alone near the opposite side of the rooftop. He looked different. Not dramatically, but enough. His confident energy was gone, his smile seemed forced, and he kept glancing around as if searching for someone to rescue him from his own discomfort. Then our eyes met. He immediately started walking toward me. I stayed where I was. Yvette. Kevin. He glanced at my coworkers. Can we talk privately? There's nothing private left to discuss. Please. 5 minutes. I sighed and stepped a few feet toward the bar. Kevin followed. Alexa was a mistake. I didn't react. She never wanted a relationship. She just wanted something casual. The irony was almost too perfect. Kevin continued. When I tried making it serious, she pulled away. Then she ghosted me. I heard. His face tightened. Of course you did. There was an awkward pause. Then he lowered his voice. I understand now. Understand what? What we had. He swallowed. It was real. Stable. You were always there. I treated that like it was boring because I was stupid. I looked at him calmly. The friends with benefits thing was disgusting, he continued. I know that now. I was scared of committing fully, and Alexa made me think there was something better out there. You thought I would wait. Kevin looked down. Yes. At least that part was honest. I thought you loved me enough that you wouldn't actually leave. That sentence explained everything. My loyalty had become permission in his mind. He stepped closer. Can we start over? No. Even as friends? No. His eyes filled. Yvette, please. I've changed. Our arrangement ended the night you suggested it. I know. You wanted benefits without commitment. I chose neither. Kevin reached for my arm. I stepped back before he touched me. But I miss you, he whispered. You're doing so well. New job, traveling, everything. Let me be part of that again. There it was. Not let me rebuild what I destroyed. Let me be part of what you built without me. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I've built something better without you. Kevin's face fell. That's cruel. It's factual. You act like I'm nobody. You're not nobody. I paused. You're just not relevant to my life anymore. That hurt him more than anger would have. For a few seconds he stood there completely silent. Then he whispered, So that's it? That was it 6 months ago. I turned back toward my coworkers. Behind me, Kevin said, You really don't care anymore? I stopped. Not because I was reconsidering. Because I realized he deserved one honest answer. I cared deeply, Kevin. That's why what you did hurt. I looked back at him. But caring about someone doesn't mean accepting whatever position they decide to give you. He stared at me. You wanted me as your backup while you figured out whether another woman was better. I shook my head. I don't compete for a place I already earned. Then I walked away. No dramatic confrontation. No applause. No revenge. I simply returned to my friends and continued the evening. Kevin left early. Alone. As I watched the elevator doors close behind him, I realized the power had finally shifted completely. Months earlier, Kevin believed I would accept scraps because losing him would be too painful. Now he was offering everything he once withheld. Commitment, apologies, promises. And I wanted none of it. Because sometimes karma isn't watching someone suffer. Sometimes karma is becoming so happy without them that their regret no longer matters. After Jake's birthday party, Kevin finally stopped trying to reach me. Maybe hearing, "You're not relevant to my life anymore," was what finally made the boundary real. Maybe he understood that there was no version of friendship waiting for him once Alexa disappeared. Either way, the silence returned. This time, it didn't hurt. It felt complete. My life kept moving forward. I earned another promotion, traveled more for work, and started taking opportunities I once would have rejected because they interfered with Kevin's schedule. A few months later, I met Daniel. There was no dramatic beginning, no instant obsession. We met through work connections, talked over coffee, and discovered that we shared the same basic idea of relationships. If you choose someone, you actually choose them. Daniel didn't call commitment boring. He didn't need backup options. He didn't treat stability like something embarrassing. One evening, after we had been dating for a while, I told him the short version of what happened with Kevin. Daniel stared at me. He actually asked you to stay friends with benefits while he decided whether he wanted another woman? Yes. And expected you to agree? Yes. Daniel shook his head slowly. That's impressive. Impressive? The confidence required to make an offer that terrible. I laughed harder than I expected. That was when I realized the story had stopped hurting. It had become something I could look back on without feeling humiliated. Because Kevin's proposal had never reflected my value. It reflected how confident he had become that I would tolerate anything to keep him. Last I heard, he was still single. A mutual friend mentioned that he had gone through several short relationships after Alexa. Each one seemed to begin intensely and end just as quickly. I didn't ask for details. I wasn't waiting for karma anymore. Alexa had already given him the clearest lesson possible. Kevin had tried to make me the convenient option while chasing someone more exciting. Then, the person he chose treated him exactly the way he had planned to treat me. Enjoyable when convenient, disposable when commitment entered the conversation. The irony didn't need my participation. Sometimes I think about the woman I was during those first nights after the breakup, lying awake and wondering whether I had been too predictable, too safe, too ordinary. I wish I could tell her what I know now. Being dependable isn't weakness. Being loyal isn't boring. Wanting commitment doesn't mean you lack excitement. The mistake was offering those things to someone who viewed them as guarantees that I would never leave. Kevin thought 6 years of love meant I would accept being demoted. Instead, those 6 years taught me exactly how much I had invested, and exactly why I would never accept half a relationship afterward. I don't regret supporting him when he struggled. I don't regret helping pay for therapy. I don't regret staying beside him through family problems or giving up trips when I believed he needed me. Those choices reflected who I was. What he did with that loyalty reflected who he was. That distinction gave me peace. Daniel and I are serious now. We aren't rushing anything, but there are no games either. When we talk about the future, nobody needs to explore options. Nobody keeps someone else waiting in reserve. We simply decide things together. It sounds ordinary. After what I experienced, ordinary feels pretty incredible. Kevin once told me I would regret leaving when I found myself alone. He was wrong. Leaving him was when I stopped feeling alone. Because loneliness isn't always an empty apartment or an empty side of the bed. Sometimes, loneliness is sitting across from the person you love while they explain why you should happily become their second choice. Walking away from that wasn't losing a relationship. It was choosing myself. So if someone tells you they need to explore another person while keeping you around for comfort, believe what they're really saying. They don't want partnership. They want insurance. And you don't have to become anyone's backup plan. Kevin offered me friendship with benefits until he was sure about Alexa. I withdrew the benefits. Then, I withdrew the friendship. And when Alexa eventually became sure she didn't want him, that stopped being my problem. By then, I had already found something far more valuable than revenge. I had found a life where nobody had to wonder whether they were being chosen.